Welcome to the Myth and Magic Authors Podcast, folklore and fantasy topics aimed at creative storytellers. To write stories and challenge your brain with exciting ideas, delve into these presentations and reflections. See how fantasy realms are based on actual world history, legend, and lore. Study fairy tales, nature fables, and supernaturalism to engage in a jumble of concepts that will trigger your fancy and get you writing imaginatively. Now, here's your host, Neil Mack.
Hello, fantasy fiction fans. Welcome to another edition of Myth and Magic, the podcast especially for fantasy fiction authors. What makes a book pleasurable to read? But first, I want to take you through a 4-part scare plan, because we all want to know how to write something truly scary, and we all want to know about the ingredients of fear. So I want to bring to you 4 ways to impart fear in your fantasy, and I call it the 4-part scare plan. So are you ready? Number 1, experiences. So what I mean by this is that you need to collect sensory data from all of your characters. So you stuff your paragraphs with sensory detail, for example, imagery, but also sights and sounds and tastes, touch sensations, and of course smells. Then you need to interpret this sensory detail to maximise the anxiety. So there'll be icy gravestones, there'll be bat wings flapping, there'll be darkly swirling clouds, there'll be outrageous, vile flavours and goosebumps. And then you need to organise your information in a way that's likely to elicit a physiological or behavioural response in your audience. So what I mean by that is that you'll want them to bite their nails, or you want the story to turn their stomach, or you want them to move in their seat, or rub their chin, or start to screech. The next part of the scare plan is to factor in recognised well-known scares. And these are the ones that are proven to give the jitters to almost everybody. Everybody will be scared by these things. So check out the stockroom of anxieties from a list of the most routinely experienced scares. And these are generally accepted to be the most well-known of all scary things. Heights, snakes, spiders, eyes, sudden movements and sudden surprise sounds, confined spaces, blood, the dark, flying and falling, rats and mice, and holes in the ground. Now you can grab any of these scares straight from the shelf and dust them down and use them, and who could blame you, because they always work. But I think even better is if you mix them up a bit. So try to think outside of the box and imagine your own terrifying slant or unpleasant distortion on these notorious carriers of fear. For example, why not hang your character high but dangled over a pit of blood? Or make a spider explode in somebody's face, making the guts squirm out like icky little snake worms. Ugh. Or make giant rats burst out of the drains. Or snakes fall from ceiling rafters. Do you get the idea? The next part is to focus on character. What type of person would you certainly not want to be with in any given dangerous situation? A jackass? A muddlehead? A feather brain? A two-faced git? An obstructional muttonhead? An indifferent buffoon? A passive ninny? A complacent dork? A cocky poseur? A swell-headed braggart? Would you like to be with any of those in a dangerous situation? I wouldn't, but I need you to fill your story with those guys anyway. That way, when danger erupts, there'll be no place for your reader to turn. There'll be no one around to offer a sensible way out of danger, except perhaps the comforting arms of the only trustworthy person in the story, and that's going to be your protagonist. You've seen this idea before in horror movies or thriller adventures. All of the people that surround the heroes are idiots or two-faces or poseurs or braggarts. So fill your story with that kind of supplementary character. And finally, you need to master the unknown. And this is part 4, installing your fear factor. Because there's only one thing that's truly scary, and that's the unknown. So if you have a monster, make sure you don't reveal it until the end. If you have a dark secret or dark threat, don't uncover it until the last chapter. Keep your terrible secrets hidden. Just hint how bad they can be. So think of this as growing the terror in your story. Imagine, if you can, that your terror is an ugly, nameless abomination that lurks under your bread and needs to be fed from time to time. You, the creator of this monster, will have to nurture it and feed it and pet it until it's huge enough and ugly enough to leap out of the darkness on its all fours and then disembowel everybody in the room. The key to mastering the unknown terror is that you should only hint at its unspeakable horror. You should never show it. Just point an audience in the right direction and learn to feed and nurture your horror with these literary devices. First, use allusions, allusions. These are indirect or passing references to the unseen horror without actually talking directly about it. Use omission, that is, intentionally not said or not admitted about the horror, so the audience will always fear the worst. And use circumlocution. This is create conversations that tiptoe around the horror rather than dare to address it directly. You know, like people talk about death, they talk about passing away or gone to the angels. They don't say such and such person is dead. This is circumlocution. Or use euphemism. Replace unpleasant or uncomfortable ideas and words about the true nature of the horror with expressions or phrases that are somehow more agreeable. Though by doing so, your characters will never sense how truly terrible the horror will become, although the reader will start to guess the truth. Or use inappropriate humour. This is where idiotic and buffoonish characters make light of something that's actually truly horrific. Or use irony. This is where you might employ words or phrases that convey the exact opposite of what the horror will eventually come to mean. Or use understatement. Downplay the obvious threat that the horror will pose. So there you are. There's the 4-part scare plan. Try to install it in your novel, and I'll be interested to see how you get on. Let me know how it goes. Tweet me at Neilmach, Neilmach, all one word. Good luck with your scare plan. So I told you that I would give you some tips about how to make your book pleasurable to read. As a fantasy author, you'll want to deliver your readers lots of amusement and lots of satisfaction. But what actually makes a book a pleasure to read? We've all said it, haven't we? Well, I really enjoyed that book, but what is it that actually makes a book enjoyable? I think you need to add a few of these ingredients, and I'm going to go through a list now, and I'll put the list of this and also the fear factor on my website, Neilmach, which is neilmach.me. But here we go. Here's the ingredients that I think you will need in order to delight your audience. First, encourage reader participation by asking questions or setting challenges within the narrative. And get readers to explore tantalising possibilities about themselves by introducing perspectives that they will identify with. And help readers gain knowledge, perhaps secrets, for example, through reading and through persevering with the story. And provide deeper insights and thoughts on life and on individuality and on selfhood. And this will allow the reader the space and freedom to be reflective as they read. And transport the reader to another world and ensure total immersion. So use many sights and sounds and tastes and tactile sensations and smells. This is why people love travel diaries so much, because it's transporting the reader to another world. And I think it goes hand in hand with this, but take readers on a mind-expanding journey. A mind-expanding journey can be to an unknown or even impossible place, for example, to a far distant constellation, or, of course, through the looking glass and into a fantasy world that's taking the readers on a mind-expanding journey. And make the story as relatable as you can, because you want the reader to make an emotional connection with the character. So the characters ought to be human or human-like, even if they're not humans themselves, and satisfy the reader's hunger for knowledge by bringing new and exciting facts. But the idea, of course, is to add snippets of information. You shouldn't be overloading them, but it's nice for the reader to feel satisfied that they've learnt something new, and provide a sense of accomplishment. Has the reader been asked to learn something new? Yes. Well, in that case, reward their success. Or has the reader been through hell and back? Yes. Well, in that case, reward them with some peace and quiet. And bring thought-provoking arguments to a fore by giving the characters a voice and then letting them speak their minds freely. And create enough space so that your readers can find time to be alone with the ideas of the story and within the safety and the safe confines of the narrative. And of course enable vicarious adventuring. So take your readers on escapades and getaways and gallivants and even whitewater roller coaster rides, the sort of thing they wouldn't normally do on their day off. That's the kind of thing you want to take your readers on. And allow your readers the opportunity to succumb to voyeurism. Let them look and touch and smell and taste and snoop in on the most private episodes and the most intimate moments. So there you are. What makes a book pleasurable to read? There are a few ingredients there, and as I say, I'll put that list on my website, neilmach, Neilmach, all one word, .me. Good luck with your fantasy writing this month, and I'll speak to you again next week. Bye.